is an engine blowing. It's Damon Hill. What can I or anybody say?
All the memories that you have of Grand Prix racing, and if you follow Grand Prix racing, you visualise the picture and you can hear Murray's voice in the background, and he's part of the whole experience.
And look at that! And colossally, that's Mansell!
The thing I love about Murray is year after year after year is his enthusiasm for the job.
It's over the line together, and it's almost a dead heat. It's Jackie Stewart.
And there Murray's revving now at 17,000 revs, as he always has done, with a voice more recognisable than any commentator I know in the world.
Well, it's not very often we actually go to a track when it's just breaking light. It's well, I can't see the sun, and it's now 25 to 9. But what I'm concerned about is my porridge still going to be there when we get there?
It's an essential part of your day.
Absolutely,
porridge, isn't it?
absolutely.
Well, the race weekend really begins on a Friday, I suppose, and last year I mostly travelled to the circuit early in the morning with Simon Taylor and Jim Rosenthal.
I don't think he realises that he's
on camera.
I don't think he...
Oh, Simon, you made another friend there.
Yeah. I don't think he realises he's dealing with an expert, does he? Locks on, chaps.
Another diplomatic triumph, Simon.
Buenos dias.
He looked happy to see us.
There we are, properly dressed now.
Logoed up, Murray, logoed up.
Well done.
We made it.
Well done. Well done. Another impeccable drive. Jerez 1997 was without precedent. It was the last race of the best Formula One World Championship Grand Prix year we'd had for a very, very long time.
Morning.
It was the race at which a truly nail-biting, dramatic World Championship was going to be decided at an excellent circuit with good weather conditions, and where the drama and the prospects had never been more exciting.
Morning. First breakfast.
What all of us normally do is go as a group to the caterers in the paddock who look after a lot of the Formula One teams. I like it because they're very nice people. They put on a jolly good meal, and I see the same faces there every morning.
I've got my new pass, Murray.
What a magic.
What do they do?
I've got my last run of the season.
Murray's on his 4th jar of honey.
Sarah eats on race day.
I've got it in my head that porridge is good for you for some nutritional reason. And I also quite enjoy the ribbing that I get.
I tell you what.
And I bet you get it too. What is your favourite recipe, don't you?
My wife fills it in.
I was born into motor racing, really, because my father was a professional racing motorcyclist in the days when people aspired to own a motorcycle. It was big time to own a motorcycle, so it was even bigger time to be a top racing motorcyclist. And he was the equivalent of world champion in his day. So I was passionately interested in motorcycle racing, and as an extension of that, all kinds of motorsport, and particularly what was then Grand Prix racing, because Formula One didn't actually begin until 1950. And that really was the genesis of it all, the fact that I was born into it and acquired and absorbed knowledge which led to enthusiasm. So far as the television is concerned, we have this absolutely magnificent studio that's specially erected on the site. The ITV team is a very big one. We have a production meeting. Neil Duncanson gets us together and tells us how it's going to be and makes sure that we're all pulling in the same direction and that we've all got it right.
Murray Martin, which we'll do tomorrow. So you'll be together at the top, together at the end.
Do we finish after the interviews or go on?
It rather depends
Martin.
what happens. Martin will need
Yeah,
in the studio
yeah.
after that, if you can wing back there. Any other questions? Everyone know what they're supposed to be doing?
Think so. Yeah.
Correct answer. Well done, everybody. Okay, brilliant. Let's enjoy it, though.
Deep, deep down, I wanted to be better than my father. I think a lot of sons want to be better than their father. And there's only one way you can do that, and that's to do it. So I started racing motorcycles. I rode in what are now called endurance six-day trials. I got a gold medal in the 1949 International Six Days Trial on my 500T Norton. But in the process, I found out that I wasn't as good as I hoped to be, and I certainly wasn't ever going to be anything like as good as my father was. So the inevitable happened. In life, those that can, do, and those that can't, talk about it. And that's when I started talking about it. There's one thing I always do on the Friday, and that's go and have a look at the commentary box. I know basically where the commentary box is, because it will be in the same place as it was last year. But in some cases I want to go and confirm that it is as ghastly as last year, and in other cases to see that it's as good as last year. Most of the stuff that I need to know to talk about, it's in my head. But I like to make sure that if I need a fact and I can't remember it instantaneously, I've got it there on paper. Before I even go to the race, I do a special crib sheet with the names of the drivers, their ages, where they come from, what experience they've got, all that sort of thing. And I lay it out in a particular manner, and it's always the same, so that I know instantly where to look at. I put lots of other bits of paper. In fact, I'm famous for putting bits of paper up all over the box.
I think the first time I worked with Murray, I remember going up into the commentary box, and there was Murray with a pile of preparation like you've never seen, all handwritten and meticulously in different colours of pen, and a record on everybody's behaviour, driver record, race wins, starts, family members, granddaughters' names, everything was on the piece of paper, many pieces of paper. And then I'm looking around and I'm saying, well, Murray, where's your seat? I mean, you're going to sit. I don't sit. So for the whole race duration, he paced like a caged lion with this lip mic, which he had to be close to his lips so that he could shout even louder into it, and ran back and forward. And when I was supposed to say something, I was supposed to use the same mic. So I had to have my running shoes on to keep up with Murray to try and get the microphone if I had suddenly seen something that was absolutely vital, in my opinion, to be said, or in some cases a correction. And all of this fantastic equipment that he had created in the way of information suddenly seemed to go down the pan when the red light went on the camera.
Still walking through, I'll see you in a minute. I'm always mindful of the fact that when the race starts, Martin Brundle and I are going to be talking to everybody for about an hour and a half, and I want to cram into my head before the race begins anything and everything that's relevant to what is happening and what might happen. Now, if I had known during the commentary then the meaning of that,
yes,
it would have been fabulous.
I think to sum up Japan, Murray, I think it was an amazing team effort from every point.
So I talked to team owners, I talked to team managers, I talked to mechanics, I talked to drivers, I talked to engineers. Talking is my life and my stock in trade, and so I'm literally pumping my brain up with facts. My father was going to be doing commentary on a combined cars and motorcycle event at Shelsley Walsh, which is a hill climb in Worcestershire, a very famous, traditional, historic event. And he couldn't do it, so they switched the chap who was going to be doing the public address to do the BBC broadcast. The Midland Automobile Club said to my father, "You got us into this fix, now get us out of it. Who can do the public address for us?" And he said, "Well, why don't you give the boy a go? It can't do any harm and it might do some good."
This was my golden opportunity. And as far as I was concerned, there was one chap that I wanted to reach, and it was a chap called Jim Pestridge, the head man for the BBC's sporting coverage. Now, the way you do a public address commentary at a hill climb, all the spectators are there. They can see what you're talking about. You have to give them fairly basic information. But I decided I was going to expose them to my view of how a radio commentary could be done. And Jim Pestridge heard it and was impressed enough to give me an audition, and the audition worked. I try to spend as much time as I possibly can talking not only to drivers, but especially to mechanics.
You can't test in November or December?
December when it starts again.
And getting into the garages to look at the cars, because very often you can find out things from the mechanics that you can't find out any other way.
How are you, young man?
Very well, thank you.
What's going to happen on Sunday?
My job, basically, is identifying the car and the driver that people see on the screen.
Just looking to see if you got a third pedal down there. Tim, I was just saying, I was having a look to see if you got a third pedal down there. No.
But I do the best I can to make sure that if there's any alterations to the cars since the last meeting, I've got them in my head. I get a bit of stick for not getting it right sometimes. And in my own defence, I have to say that it can be quite difficult when cars are going past you at 180, 190 miles an hour.
Some people moan about the mistakes he makes. Others love him for it, and he's very open about that. He said to me, at one race, I think I had to correct him three times, and I spoke to him about it afterwards because I was uncomfortable with it. And he said, "Look, you keep correcting me, then I'll get it right next time." You know, and at 74 years old, I tell you, if I'm half as sharp as that at his age, I'll be very, very happy.
Part of his myth, if you like, about Murray is he makes these errors, and sometimes I'm confused. I think he actually puts them in himself to make sure that he follows his image, and you know, that image is infectious and it has a worldwide appeal.
He said, "Congratulations, Damon, you're on pole position for the British Grand Prix." And I just had this small grain of doubt in the back of my mind that he had come a little bit too soon there. And sure enough, about half a lap later, he came on the radio and said, "I'm terribly sorry, Damon, to break the news to you, but Alan Prost is now on pole. He's just pipped you."
He does have a great depth of knowledge. I think the only problem is that his excitement gets in the way of some of the knowledge sometimes, and some of the names and some of the cars. But that's his endearing quality, and we love him for it.
Some 17 years since you bought McLaren. You've had some good times and you've had some bad times. What do you remember best?
I don't remember buying McLaren.
A quite incredible thing happened to me during my first ever broadcast, that British Grand Prix at Silverstone, 1949. I'm talking about a time when the safety precautions were absolutely non-existent compared with now. It's one of the big ways that motor racing has changed. In those days, the drivers wore no overalls, they had no safety belts, the cars were death traps, there were no safety barriers, there were no gravel traps.
Gerard, that very healthy note you heard just then, was Gerard, and he's driving as usual his inimitable race. He was won Jersey, I'm sorry.
And I am standing in my commentary box at Stowe, and coming down the hangar straight towards me in his ERA, I suppose at about 140 miles an hour, was a very famous chap called John Bolster, who lost control of his ERA, was thrown out of his car, literally at my feet. And I thought, my God, he's dead. What happens now? They didn't tell me what to do about this. So I said, "Bolster's gone off!" which was a masterpiece of understatement. Bolster was perfectly all right as it happened. He spent a fair time in hospital. But to my great subsequent relief, there wasn't a death involved, because that's the very worst thing that can happen to you. But for a debut, it was pretty dramatic.
At every Grand Prix, I always walk the track, and that's just to get it right into my head.
Often I walk the course by myself, but sometimes I get the unalloyed pleasure and the extreme luxury of walking around with Martin himself.
I mean, I think I had the most embarrassing experience in my commentary life here, because you remember when Alesi was in the Tyrrell? When was it? 90, I think it was?
Yeah.
And he came barrelling down the outside here and went off into the gravel trap.
Yeah.
And I was castigating him from the point of view of someone who'd never ever done it for making a thoroughly stupid move.
And the wheel fell had fallen off or something.
That's it. That's exactly what had happened. That's exactly what happened. And I felt about this high.
Yeah. And
Martin can give me little wrinkles like, you have to back off to 160 miles an hour here, or that's the point that I always used to brake. And putting his knowledge with mine hopefully enables me to get it right.
I mean, that's probably too rough, surprisingly.
I've walked the whole way round the course, and every time I do so, I honestly marvel at the enormous skill of the drivers.
People often say to me, who is the greatest of all time? And I always say to them, I don't know. But I can talk about who were the greatest of a number of drivers. I go back a long way, so I go back before the war, and I go back to people like Nuvolari, Caracciola, Rosemeyer, and my hero, the man I have a statuette of in my study, is Tazio Nuvolari, the flying Mantuan. He was a charismatic Italian who drove like nobody before and nobody since, in my opinion. And probably the greatest race of all time was the 1935 German Grand Prix, where Nuvolari in an outmoded Alfa Romeo beat all the great Germans. An absolutely magical drive. Very close to Nuvolari, the immortal Juan Manuel Fangio, the Argentine driver.
Fangio's 1957 German Grand Prix was, without a shadow of doubt in my mind, one of the greatest drives of all time. He started the race on just half a tank of fuel, and he did that so that he could build up a lead, and he got a lead of 28 seconds when on the 12th lap he came in for what was a planned pit stop. And he had to sit in the pits for 56 incredibly long seconds. And during that time, the Ferraris of Mike Hawthorn and Peter Collins both went past him. He rejoined in third place, and by then he was 48 seconds behind the leaders. But he then drove in a way that no one had ever seen before. And he finally caught and passed Collins and then Hawthorn with just 2 laps to go, and he went on to win the race of his life.
A man who I have the greatest respect for, and one of the greatest of all time, was Stirling Moss. And it's a cliche, of course, the greatest driver never to become world champion. He should have been world champion 4 times. And just as Fangio and Nuvolari had their fabled races, Stirling Moss in 1961 in the 1.5 litre Lotus blew away the Ferraris of Richie Ginther and Phil Hill at Monaco and then at the Nürburgring. And they were drives that the man won, the car didn't win it. Stirling Moss won those races because of his brilliance. Jackie Stewart. I mean, Jackie Stewart is absolutely unique. It's not just that he's been world champion 3 times, and a man who thought more than most people about the way he went motor racing, and who, like Stirling Moss, was one of the first real professionals as opposed to an enthusiastic amateur. But he's gone on to become his own team owner.
When the cars aren't on the track, there is actually still a heck of a lot of work to do for the programs, because you've got to nail the drivers, obviously, when they're not on the track, and equally, obviously, when they're not mentally and physically involved in debriefing with the team. So you just pick your time and get them at a moment when they're relaxed and not doing anything in particular.
So to business, this weekend, a key player could well be Michael Schumacher's teammate, Eddie. Look, 2 minutes of being like an adult. All right, please.
Okay, Daddy.
We interviewed drivers like Eddie Irvine, Michael Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve to titillate people's taste buds about the race itself that's coming. Nowadays, our Grand Prix coverage requires me to spend a lot more time in front of the camera. Things used to be much simpler when it was just me and a microphone.
What? Okay, no, you go ahead. You've got the priority, not me.
Thank you very much.
Okay. What an incredible race it was in Japan. I've never seen anything like it. Almost everyone thought that with a 9-point lead, Jacques Villeneuve was going to romp home to his first World Championship. But it wasn't like that. Listen to Louise Goodman.
But when, in 1978, the BBC decided that they were going to do all the Grand Prix, they were kind enough to ask me. And then in 1980, Jonathan Martin, who was the head of sport of the BBC, took me to one side and said, we're going to have 2 commentators from now on, Murray. You're going to be one, and James Hunt is going to be the other. James Hunt, I said to myself. What the hell does he know about it? He's a racing driver. He's not a commentator. All my self-defense mechanisms sprang into action because I think subconsciously I was thinking they're trying to get rid of me. This is the thin end of the wedge. I'm going to be out and Hunt is going to be in, and I fiercely resent it. But I suspect that diplomatically I said, that'll be nice. Jonathan, I'll look forward to that.
Round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Centre is up to third.
And after being crowded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna.
It actually worked very well because James and I, in the box together, sparked off each other.
And takes Dundee, Alio, they clip each other, and that's where Alio went off yesterday.
Yes, and Mansell was very lucky to not be taken off by that ridiculous piece of driving by Alio, who didn't even look at his mirrors.
So we're at one of these situations, and it's the British Grand Prix, and I'm standing up there shouting away at the congregation outside, and James wanted to say something, and he laconically caught hold of the wire to which the sole microphone, which I was using, was attached, and gives it an enormous yank. And I was holding it fairly loosely, and it flew out of my hands into James's hand, and he starts talking. And I was absolutely livid because the adrenaline was pouring out of me, and I'd suddenly had it stopped like that. And not only had it stopped like that, but stopped by this upstart Hunt who'd stopped me from talking. And I actually had my fist back. Don't forget, I was standing up and I was sitting there. And I actually had my fist back to give him a good 4-penny one. I was so angry. And I looked across the box, and Mark Wilkin, who was the producer, was waving his finger at me admonishingly. Don't do it, Murray. So I didn't do it. But we nearly had a nasty incident.
James was a charismatic chap who knew all about it. He'd been there and done it, and he had a wonderful way of expressing things. But I have to say that Martin Brundle is the very best that I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with.
And it's a good circuit too. Let's have a look at it.
So you took all 30 seconds by yourself, Murray, in the first minute.
Did I?
He is a modern Grand Prix driver. He will have driven a Grand Prix car in testing just a few days before the Grand Prix that we're talking about. Martin is an ex-world champion, sports car racing. Martin has driven for, I think, 8 Grand Prix teams. But much more important than any of those things is the fact that the chemistry in the box, the rapport between us, is good.
But when they go cue Murray Martin, I'm extremely pleased that he's the man that picks it up, because when you open your mouth to that number of people, your tongue goes all dry and you think, I hope this is right, what I'm about to say. And it's great for me because I can stand back and then notice what's going on and see what's happening, and then come in with something that's hopefully accurate, precise, and a salient point. And then I can always reverse out, knowing Murray has the skill to just pick it up and say so. He can always say something. I'll never forget sitting in the commentary box in Melbourne when we were just doing a practice before our first race, with the ITV production. Everybody was a bit nervous. This was about the Wednesday. And they said, OK, Murray Martin, can we have a practice run in the commentary box? And Murray picks up the microphone and starts commentating on an imaginary race that almost had me looking out of the window. It was incredible.
The most important thing of the weekend is the race itself. That's why we're there. But the second most important thing is the qualifying, and that's the 1 hour period from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 2 o'clock. And that's where Martin and I are in the box, getting really tightened up.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Next radio camera cue, Jim. Coming to World
It's the last qualifying session of the season. The next hour will have a huge bearing on the destination of the World Championship. The commentators, Martin Brundle and Murray Walker. Now then, Murray, what a tense day.
It's a bit like me waiting for my maths results at school, Jim. It is extremely tense. But everyone's waiting to see who's rolling out.
Panis is first, Panis.
When they do go out, you really haven't got time to think of anything because it's crash, bang, wallop the whole time. And your responsibility is watch the cars, watch the drivers, watch the track, and particularly watch this timing monitor that we have.
Very quickly found first gear.
Yellow.
Just a little snippet. Everybody in the pit lane has lost the monitors, so none of the engineers know what their cars are doing.
Well, that's nice. Do you want to give us that?
Timing for you and for us is that all the timing monitors alongside the whole row of boxes have blown. We haven't got the faintest idea what's going on in terms of time, so we'll tell you what's happening in the pictures and hope to get our times back very soon. It reminds me of the old days when we used to stand here with the old turnip stopwatch in our hands and time to the nearest 1/10 of a second. This is a time when technology is not so good.
So that maths exam came in quite useful, did it, in the old days, Murray?
And I'm delighted to tell you, and that's a masterpiece of understatement, that we've got our monitors back again. We're riding with Jacques Villeneuve, Sector 1 into Turn 4, the right-hander, and Jacques Villeneuve is inside Frenson's time. Now this is the fast track down to Turn 5, 185 miles an hour. Back off into second gear, 55 miles an hour on the apex, accelerate round the left-hander, it keeps on going, 145 miles an hour, 165 miles an hour, and he moves up into provisional pole position.
Well, that's more like it. That's the kind of lap times we were expecting to see. That's given them all a wake-up call. There's so much time under braking here for this chicane.
Oh, look at that, 0.3 of a second inside. This is terrific. Michael Schumacher is going to move up into provisional pole position if he just keeps up this speed as he comes into the last corner now. In tight on the apex, get it steady, boot it hard, over the grid, and over the line goes Michael Schumacher and moves up into second place with a time exactly the same as Jacques Villeneuve's to the nearest 1,000th of a second. They've both done 1:21.072, but Villeneuve keeps the provisional pole because he got there first. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen is approaching the end of the first sector now. And this is going to give us a very good indication. And he's inside Villeneuve's time. This is certainly a pole position time coming up for Heinz-Harald Frentzen. And it couldn't have happened at a better time because team orders will count tomorrow. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen, this is amazing. I cannot believe this. Heinz-Harald Frentzen has done exactly the same time as Jacques Villeneuve and Michael Schumacher and stays therefore in third place.
An unbelievable, literally unprecedented qualifying session, because for the first time ever in Formula One history, we had not 2, but 3 people setting exactly the same time to 1,000th of a second. And the magic of that was that Villeneuve and Schumacher were the 2 people who were fighting for the championship. I mean, if it had been planned that way and fixed that way, and some people said it was fixed that way, it couldn't have been better.
Well,
I think to do my job, you've got to be a bit of a ham, You've got to enjoy projecting yourself. You've got to like people, enjoy talking to people, enjoy being with people.
Good heavens. Where was that taken?
And if those people like what you do and want your autograph and want to have their photograph taken with you and want to talk to you, it's enormously flattering as an individual. And yes, I like it very much.
If I make a prediction, it always fails, and it wouldn't. Yeah, sure.
I don't think Murray's become popular. I think he was always popular. He has the charisma that, and he has the voice and the excitement. He really gets into a race, doesn't he? And his support for all the British drivers has been magnanimous over all the years.
I think he favours British competitors, as of course he's bound to, as he's a British commentator, and I think he's a great supporter of British drivers. And I don't think there's anything wrong in having favouritism when you're talking to a British audience.
We've had two very notable British world champions in recent years. I mean, I remember Jim Clark with great respect. I remember James Hunt with great respect. But then in 1992, Nigel Mansell, who had got the British public by the throat in a way like very few drivers before had, became world champion in enormously emotional circumstances for me.
You are about to see Nigel Mansell become world champion of 1992. Mansell finishes and he's world champion.
The great thing about Nigel, which I absolutely adored him for, and the British public adored him for, was that there was always something dramatic happening with Nigel. He's that sort of a chap.
Barcelona, 1991. Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna came out of that last corner, down the start and finish straight, down to turn one at 200 miles an hour, side by side.
And you could see the sparks flying up from underneath their cars, and neither was going to give way, but one of them had to, and it was Senna that gave way. Fabulous memory. And then in 1996, very recently, Damon Hill, who'd got the British public by the throat with both hands, possibly even more than Nigel, became world champion in even more emotional circumstances for me.
He took the lead, he stayed there, and Damon Hill exits the chicane and wins the Japanese Grand Prix. And I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.
I am as fond of, as a chap, Damon, as I am of Nigel, but in a very different sort of way, because I used to commentate on the great Graham Hill, Damon's father. And Damon and I have actually got something in common, and that's that we both have the disadvantage of famous fathers. As you're growing up, you're always aware that it's your father that people in particular respect and admire, and that you are the son of the father.
Damon Hill, world champion. What about that?
It's just so fantastic. I can't tell you, Murray. I was driving along and I could hear you in my head. I was, there it goes, you know, Jack's out, Murray's off.
Grand Prix racing's changed not at all and enormously. If that seems a strange answer, it's still the man and the machine trying to prove on a racetrack that he's better than all the others by going round faster, longer, until he sees the checkered flag. It is now a technical tour de force, where before it was something much simpler, and as far as the drivers are concerned, they are now full-time professionals making a gigantic amount of money, where before they were enthusiastic amateurs who were paying a gigantic amount of money.
Michael, first of all, thank you very much for the special bit you did for my show the other night. It was terrific.
We've got an immortal great in our time now, and it's called Michael Schumacher. Schumacher has this image in Britain of being an arrogant, self-opinionated German. And the only thing that's true about that statement is that he's German. He's not arrogant, he's not self-opinionated. In my experience, he's an extremely nice, cheerful, helpful bloke.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, the most sensational qualifying session ever. And Michael Schumacher starts on the front row of the grid tomorrow. Michael, have you got anything hidden up your sleeve for tomorrow?
I hope I'm going to have an ace left on one side.
I'm always enormously impressed with his ability behind the wheel, his tactical acumen, and every aspect of him as a racing driver. And he proved it at Monaco last year, when he not only won the race in the wet in appalling circumstances, but demonstrated not only his tactical skill, but his acumen in getting the right tyres on the car, driving the right car out of the two that were available to him. He demonstrated that he is the most complete racing driver of today. On Saturday evening, I always have a final check in my bedroom in the hotel. I sit down with my notes and make sure that they are updated with things like who's got the pole position for the race that's going to happen tomorrow, what the speed is, how that's affected the greatest number of pole positions that individual drivers have achieved. It's just generally a final crossing the T's and dotting the I's sequence to make sure that the anoraks who are going to be watching me on Sunday hopefully won't be able to catch me out.
I don't think Murray Walker will ever grow up. I think he's still mentally the enthusiast that he might have been in his teens, and maybe even before his teens. He's just so full of excitement about motorsports of any kind.
He's able to add an enthusiasm with his commentary, with his voice, to the most dull moments. And of course the exciting moments, he's bursting out of the TV screen at you. You can almost see him there, even though all you can do is hear his voice.
It's nice to have a commentator who's so involved in it, and that's why he's so good. He gets all excited, he makes mistakes, it doesn't matter. You know that he is liking what he is seeing, and it comes over to the viewer.
Sunday is different. It starts earlier, and it's Sunday that the race happens. The teams are just doing their final preparations for the cars. The whole paddock is busy, but if I see anybody who can give me some useful snippets, I talk to them, and I try to find out, and it's very, very difficult, what the team strategies are. By the end of my chats with them, I've got a fairly broad idea of what the individual strategies are going to be.
I hope that you have something very British to get excited about today. I think he thinks he can win this race. Really? Yeah.
People say to me, oh, the golden times of motor racing Grand Prix was before the war, when the Mercedes-Benz, the Auto Unions and the Maseratis were racing. Nonsense. If you look at those races coldly and objectively, the gaps were enormous between first, second and third. But we lived from particularly 1984 to 1994 in a golden time when Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Nelson Piquet, Michael Schumacher, Nigel Mansell were racing against each other. And they gave us some truly fantastic races during those years.
Mansell, if he gets it right, can sprint out of the rear wing of Senna's car. Senna moves across. He's keeping Mansell back, and he wins.
I suppose the one that probably had me fired up more than any other that I can remember was 92, Monaco. Nigel's leading the race easily in what turned out to be his World Championship year, and he had never won at Monaco, and Senna had won 4 times. Nigel's leading the race, has a puncture, he thinks, comes in, stops at the pits.
And look, this is absolutely sensational. Nigel Mansell in the pits.
They changed his wheel, only to discover that it was only a loose wheel nut, and if he had just had that tightened, he could have got out before Senna. But Senna passed him and took the lead, and for 4 or 5 laps, we had this magical situation of the 2 greatest drivers of their time battling each other at Monaco.
And do not see how Mansell, even Nigel Mansell on fresh tyres, is going to be able to get by. Mansell closes, but it's too late.
And Senna won the race. Nigel didn't, and never ever did win at Monaco. Ayrton Senna was the man who drove the most memorable and brilliant lap in the time, the very long time that I've been watching Formula One. The race was the European Grand Prix at Donington, 1993. The weather conditions were appalling. He started 4th on the grid.
And Wendlinger is coming up. Well, Senna is crowded out and is down to 5th position. And Wendlinger is up into 3rd place ahead of Schumacher.
As they shot through the Craner curves, and in the wet, remember, Senna took what looked like an absolutely impossible line on the wrong side of the track. But incredibly, he managed not only to out-accelerate Schumacher, but drive round the outside of Wendlinger as well.
And after being crowded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna.
He caught Damon Hill coming up to McLean, powered past as they got up towards Coppice, but he'd still got one man ahead of him, and that was his great rival, Alain Prost. He chased him through the S's, went down the descent to the Melbourne hairpin, caught him there, braked much, much later than the Williams.
And Senna goes through into the lead. He's passed Alain Prost.
And when he came out of Goddard's at the end of the first lap,
he'd gone from 5th to 1st.
And only Ayrton Senna, I think, could have done that. It was one of the real tragedies, and I use the word advisedly, and I don't use it very often, that Ayrton Senna was taken from us, because with the World Championships behind him and a record number of pole positions, he would have gone on to achieve much greater things. I am a belt and braces and every other insurance policy man. I go up to the commentary box an hour before the race starts. All the things that the drivers and the teams are doing in their way, I'm doing in my way to make sure that I am ready for the time when the red lights go out.
Well, there is no way that anybody can call what is going to happen.
No.
It might finish in the first 10 seconds.
It might go down to the line.
I tell you what I honestly think. I honestly think we could be talking about Damon Hill winning the race, and
I've chosen him on the suite.
Schumacher and Villeneuve battling for the championship and 3rd place. It's going to be as unpredictable as that.
Thinking back a bit, I suppose probably the most incredible closing laps I've seen at any race were Monaco in 1982, and it was a wet race. Now I'm dredging my memory, but we had about 4 changes of leader on the last lap. Alain Prost in the Renault was leading the race.
He is now on his way to his 6th Grand Prix victory in 2 years. And there goes Prost off, as did Arnoux. My goodness, what about Patrese now?
Patrese was leading in the Brabham and spun out.
He's sliding and he's lost it.
And as a result of that, Pironi, who was in the Ferrari, took over.
Didier Pironi leads and Patrese is stalled.
And ran out of petrol in the tunnel.
Is that Pironi stationary? It is! My goodness! The 3rd leader in 2 laps. And that is De Cesaris's car. But De Cesaris would have taken the lead when Pironi... So that means to say that Derek Daly can win this race.
Which let Derek Daly into the lead in the Williams, but Derek Daly crashed.
There is Derek Daly coasting to a standstill. This is unbelievable.
And I remember James saying, "This is amazing. We're all sitting here waiting for someone to come through and win the Monaco Grand Prix, and we don't know who it's going to be."
Riccardo Patrese comes up to the line to win his 1st Grand Prix.
And it turned out to be Patrese. Amazing. Motor racing is my passion. Motor racing is my life. And I get a most gigantic buzz out of it. I'm never happier and seldom as happy as I am when I'm at a Grand Prix. And the magic of the occasion, for me, transcends everything else.
And I'm in the commentary box an hour before the race begins. Martin doesn't have to be there then, and he turns up much later.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
On the air. Go, Jim.
This is the climax to the 1997 Formula One season. Ready to go in the commentary box, Martin Brundle and Murray Walker.
Murray Martin.
You heard the prospect.
Yeah, no music.
This is the realisation. For 1 year short of 50, I have been broadcasting Formula One Grand Prix, and I can tell you that I have never, ever known anything like this. As usual, when you see the lights, watch them. The reds will come on, and then they will come on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Villeneuve on the right, Schumacher on the left, front row. Behind Schumacher is Damon Hill. 4, 5, pause. And it's go, 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 go. Villeneuve gets away and Schumacher gets away. Better. Michael Schumacher leads, and up alongside Villeneuve comes Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Damon Hill is there too, but Coulthard has come through. Mika Häkkinen is up there. Fantastic start. Let's hope there are no collisions. It's absolutely perfect for Michael Schumacher and terrible for Jacques Villeneuve. Remember that all that Michael Schumacher has got to do is stay ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. Doesn't matter how many points he scores, he will win the World Championship. Look how close they are.
No, that's Villeneuve behind
I know.
Schumacher, yes.
Yeah, Villeneuve right up behind Michael Schumacher. And remember, the gap was over 5.3 seconds. Now here it is. There's Katayama. Well done, Ukyo. Well done, Ukyo. You are a Japanese gentleman. And he moves over and lets Schumacher and Villeneuve through. He's not going to interfere with the World Championship. Well done, man. Look how close it is. First, second and third absolutely together. Jacques Villeneuve looking for a way past the Ferrari.
James, can you see what you can find out from Ferrari? Why Chewie's slowing a bit?
1:25.9 on that last lap. I wonder if he's got something like a slow puncture or some kind of gear shift problem, because Villeneuve is all over him. Look, he's going through.
Out goes Michael Schumacher.
That didn't work. That didn't work, Michael. You hit the wrong part of him, my friend. I don't think that will cause Villeneuve a problem.
Michael Schumacher out, and if Villeneuve can just keep going in the points, he's won the World Championship of 1997, because out of the race goes Michael Schumacher.
You know, in all the condemnation that is levelled at Michael Schumacher, and rightly, I have to say, people forget that the great, the immortal, the godlike Ayrton Senna was an extremely ruthless driver, and that he deliberately had Alain Prost off at the beginning of the Japanese Grand Prix in 1990, which decided the World Championship.
Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing.
And Alain Prost did exactly the same thing to Ayrton Senna the previous year in 1989 in Japan.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Out! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic.
They are not all little saints, you know.
Mika Häkkinen can see that victory beckoning him. Look how close it is.
He knows Villeneuve will jump out of the way if he as much as looks at his rear wheel.
And he does it.
He's let him through.
Häkkinen is going to win. He's coming up to the last corner. Häkkinen is going to win the European Grand Prix. David Coulthard goes second, and Jacques Villeneuve settles for third place and the World Championship of 1997. Wow!
I can, in all sincerity, put my hand on my heart and say that 1997 was my best and happiest year of Grand Prix broadcasting. 1998 will be my 50th year of broadcasting about the thing that matters so much to me. Of course, I want to keep on doing what I love so much, which is talking about motor racing. But my reflexes are going to wither, or my ability to keep up with it mentally is going to wither. I don't know when that's going to be, but I know that I will know before anybody else does. And when I know that it's happening, that's the time I will stop, because the last thing I want to be is someone who is over the hill. A lot of people have been kind enough to say that I have given them pleasure over the years, and I want to continue to do that for as long as I can. But because of my age, sadly, it won't be very much longer.
Case of champagne from Ferrari to Sauber for Norberto Fontana, because the Argentinian newcomer up from Formula 3 really helped Michael Schumacher on his way there.
What engine have they got in that Sauber, Murray? Isn't it a Ferrari?
Yeah, well, it is, yes. Well, Martin, you are a cynical chap. Lap 31, coming up to half distance. Michael Schumacher now. Let's see what the gap is. It was under 1 second.